and now we come to the update student. Now in our update function, we're going to have to open that file twice, first to read, okay, and then to write, okay. And that is because first we're going to read as to what data, or to be more precise, whether we have that ID that we're looking for, okay. We want to update, so we need a primary key, so we're using the ID that we have right here, that we're asking the user to enter the ID so that we can update. So we're going to read, we are going to have to read onto that file so that we can check whether we have that particular ID that the user is asking for to be able to update it, okay. And the second time is basically to update it, literally, okay. So first we read and it checks whether we have the data, and if we have the data, we're going to perform a set of instructions right in between so that we can update it, or are able to perform some changes onto that appended data. All right, so here we're going to check whether we're going to have to open the file to read, and it's going to follow the same set of instructions to be able to read the first row, that is the headers, and then read all the rows that is remaining, that is all the data that we have inside. And then it checks if not rows, that means if there's no students, then we just return from the function because it has nothing to display. Otherwise, if it does have something to display, then we go into the records, and the first line we turn it into a uppercase like we have right here, okay. So everything is turned into an uppercase, all the headers, and then we just print them out. Then we ask the user to enter the ID, right, and we enter the ID in input string format, and that ID is converted to a integer later. So here I have a few initializations where found is going to be a boolean value, so that if I have found this particular ID, right, then we're going to turn it into true. Otherwise we're going to turn it into false, or initially is going to be false, right. And then changes made, we're going to have initially false, and we're going to turn it true, that is if the user has made any changes on that appended list. All right, and right here we have updated rows, which is basically a list of rows where each row itself is a list of strings. And the header here, it basically starts with a header, so you preserve the CSV header, right. And updated rows basically initializes a new list that will hold all the rows to be written back to the file, okay. And then we're going to let me close this, okay. One thing is that found is only found to be inside this thing right here, okay. So what we have inside here is if the ID matches with the first column, that is row 0, right. This is the first column, so the first index will be row 0, and if the ID matches with that, then we write found true, okay. And you will not find any else part, right. So if not found, we just say that the student is not found, and we return from the function, okay. That means if we have nothing else to update and there are no students to be, the ID itself that the user has given as input, the student is only not found, then we just return from the function, right. And found is where it changes only inside this for loop, okay. While inside true, inside this infinite for loop, inside while loop, we have found that keeps changing to true only inside this for loop, okay. So I'll just collapse that, and right, and then we check if the user has no changes made, okay, which is initially false. And if there are no changes made, the changes made will keep changing as soon as we enter or new data, okay, for giving an input as name, so the changes made becomes true, for new roll number true again, and then just the marks changes made becomes true, and for converting all or updating all values, changes made becomes true. All right, so this is if no changes, then no changes made, and then we come to this. So inside for loop we have So we check if the ID matches with the first the ID that the user has entered matches with the row, the row ID, that the first row, that is the ID. Then we write found true, and then we continue. Okay, and if it is not found, we just come to if not found part. So when we continue inside the infinite for loop, we have so we basically have, this is the outer infinite loop, and this is the inner infinite loop for updating only. And we are given a choice here to update either name or role or marks or all. Okay, so if we just want to update the name, then we're given a choice. We enter the choice, and the choice is an invalid input. We're just printing it as a value error, and then we continue. Okay, and as I explained earlier, we write continue because we want to basically move on to the, or skip uh, the crash, and move on to the code. Okay, so like supposing if we give ABC, then it just skips that part and we move on to the match case. Okay, so inside the match case we have a choice where we enter, if we just want to enter the name, we give that as an input for the first index, right? Since this is our format, so the first index, or rather the second index, ID is going to be a first index, which is row 0, and a second index is going to be row 1, which is name. So we're going to just change row 1, and we're going to assign that changed name to the row 1 index. All right, and then we assign true to changes made. That means there were some changes that were made, and later on changes made were checked, and if that comes to be true, then we move on to the opening the file and updating the list. Okay, and then similarly we do that with roll number and with all the marks that we can change. So enter the new marks, and we loop through those subjects that we imported from constants. Okay, and we correspond that marks to that particular subject, add it to the new marks list, and right here we are having a slice from index 3 to 0. That means from 0, 1, 2, 3, right from 3, 4 and 5 right up to the end. Okay, I must have said 0. That's not from 3 to 0, it's from 3 to right up to the end of the list. Okay, so and then we change the changes made to true. Okay, and similarly for case 4 we have we want to change all, so that would mean that we want to go over a combination of name, roll number and marks. So we're going to change the name, roll number and all the marks that we have wanted to change. And similarly for new marks is going to just be appended to the list in a slicing manner, where not in a slicing manner, we have just used this slicing so that we can assign new marks to the remaining subjects that we have in the list. Right, and case 5 is, I think, if we want to exit, right? Yeah, and if any other choice was given besides 1 to 5, then we give an invalid input or invalid choice. Okay, and then finally when we have the entire list of changes made into rows, we just append that to the updated rows. Okay, so whatever changes we have made so far is all in our updated rows list. Okay, which an updated rows is a list of it's a list within a list which is going to contain all the string values. Okay, a list of rows where each row itself is a list of strings. So in here we have with open, so we are going to open our file name again, and we're going to have W mode. That means we're going to update. We're not going to append list. We're not going to create a new data. So we're going to write W for updating that data. Then we're going to wrap the file object with the CSV writer interface with csv.writer, creating a CSV writer object. Okay, and it basically is to ensure proper comma separation, correct formatting, escaping, etc. And here we have writer.write rows. Okay, and while we were appending data, you must have noticed that we had written a writer.write row and not rows. Okay, so this is for multiple rows in one go. Okay, so all rows in one go that we want to update, we write rows. Okay, and in add student we had write row. Okay, so we are just appending to the list. We just give one row at a time, And we can even write rows for appending multiple rows at a time. It's not that it's write rows is only for updating. We can use it to append as well. And finally we have the student that is being updated successfully. So we just basically write onto the file with these set of instructions. Okay, so I'm just going to update one and see what we have. Choice 3, I want to enter the ID, right? So we're going to ask the ID. So at this point we must have we definitely must have come across this there were some rows, okay, and it skipped this execution and it has given us this student records. Okay, this is just for printing out the entire uh, list of students that we currently have. Okay, so that when we want to update, we would like to first check out all the students that we have before we update. Okay, so it gives us a point of view where we can see all the IDs and we can just write down which ID we want to update. And likewise, it just prints out all the rows of data that is inside this headers fields. Okay, and then finally we're going to be asked to enter the ID to update. So I'm going to enter say 2. I'll give it a wrong ID and students not found. Okay, that means we must have crossed this stage. Oh, sorry, that was a for loop. Okay, right, since I entered the wrong ID, it just from found, which was value, and it just checked here if that particular student that we entered is equal to the student that is already present in the row, the first column, then we found true and we continue. Okay, otherwise we get into this check statement. And say if I want to 3 update student, go for ID 1, then we're given this choice. Okay, so we enter the for loop right here. Okay, and then we're given this menu, and say I want to change for say marks. Okay, I just want to update the marks. So earlier it was 56, 89, 90. So for physics I give say 10, maths 20, computer science 30. Okay, just give it random numbers, and then we are given the same option again, right? We are not given the option for what we have in the main menu. Okay, that is because this is an infinite loop, so it's until we get out of this loop, it's not going to show us this the menu that we have right here. Okay, so I just want to change that, and till now it hasn't showed me that students were updated successfully. Okay, because at this point we can even choose to update the marks again or just the name. Okay, and say if I want to go for name and make it to Zara. Okay, and again we're going to be shown the infinite while loop that we have inside the update function, right? So, and then I want to exit finally, and when we exit, I'm going to come out of that for loop. Okay, right, that is present right here. I'm going to come out of this loop, and we're going to have changes made which were true, right? So we're going to skip this execution, and we're going to come straight down here where we're going to make we have the set of instructions where we're going to basically write onto the file or update onto the file. So it's going to show us student updated successfully. Okay, as soon as we exit, and then it's going to show us the original while infinite loop, right? To add student, view, update and delete, and finally we come to this delete student. So before we go to delete student, I just want to check the right. So we have physics 10, maths 20 and computer science 30. So we have basically changed all the marks and as well as the name. Okay, and the role we did not change because I wanted to do this separately. So now we come to the delete function. So I'm just going to collapse this, open this. So in delete function, we're going to follow the same set of instructions initially, that we're going to open the file and go into read mode, because we want to first be able to read the data that we want to delete. Okay, and to be able to read the data, we want to basically check what all IDs that we have, and based on that we're going to use that ID to delete. Okay, and right here reader equals csv.reader is basically converting the file data into an iterable of rows, and each row becomes a list of strings, right? And next header is going to keep all the headers, the first row, and this is the rest of the data stored in rows. And then we check if there are no rows or there is no data basically, then we just print out that there are no students found to delete, and then we just return from the function. Okay, and then we just print out for the user all the users, all the students that we have in the CSV file, and we don't give any headers in this case. Okay, just the entire data set, and then we ask the user to enter the ID. Okay, then their user enters the ID, and that ID is being stored in the object which refers to ID to delete. Right now, we initialize found as false in the beginning, and updated rows equals in a list where we preserve the header. That means the CSV header that we have. Okay, that is this entire first row. Then we run a for loop through all the datas to all the rows that we have, and for each row, for each student row that we have, we're going to check if row is not equal to ID to delete. That means the row that the user has provided, if it doesn't match with the row that is present in the list, then we update all those rows. Okay, so basically you are building a new data set that contains all the rows except the one to delete. Okay, it's almost equivalent to delete by exclusion. So the ones that you don't want, you just update the entire list, and the ones that you don't want, you just found equals true. Okay, so the ones that you found, keep that aside, and the ones that did not match with the ID that I gave, you just want to update that. Okay, so that's what it is exactly doing. And then if it checks if that ID is not found in that list of IDs, then just write student not found, and then we return. Okay, then because at that point there is nothing else to delete, right? And then finally we come to this line where we create a CSV writer object which will allow us to write rows into the file in a proper CSV format. And then with that we use that object to write CSV writer object to update the rows. Okay, and we write the multiple rows into that file. Now basically what this is doing is it's building a new data set that contains all the rows except the ones to delete. Okay, so in delete student as well, we are having two modes, that is R and W, to be able to read which ID that we want to delete and be able to update the ones that we are not mentioning, the IDs that we don't mention. Okay, so it's delete by exclusion. So I'm just going to use one to delete. I'm going to purposely or intentionally delete a wrong ID so that students were not found. Okay, it's going to come to this and it's going to check if there are any if the ID matches any student or not in the CSV file. Since it doesn't, it just says student not found, and if it does, say 1, it basically checks and updates all the other files except the file that all the other rows except the particular row for that ID that I mentioned. Okay, so currently the students is going to be empty. So that's it for this one. And by the way, this isn't production architecture. CSV does not scale, it doesn't handle concurrency, and every update rewrites the entire file. So that's inefficient by design, right? So that's exactly why this matters, because now you understand what actually happens when you insert data, why updates are expensive without indexing, and how tightly coupled logic and input output can make systems so hard to scale. And if you can build it manually, you can debug it professionally. And if you found value in this, engage with the video. It helps more than you think. And more importantly, take this code, break it, tweak it, and see how it behaves. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next one.